So in 2008, there was a show that was created by the late, great Joan Rivers. This show was like the show of all shows. It was a show that was about life. It was about change. It was about real people with deep meanings in life. The show was called How'd You Get So Rich? She would literally walk up, knock on a door, and say, hey, I just want to know, how'd you get so rich? And people would tell her. They would tell her how they actually developed whatever the product was that made them so much money and bought that big, beautiful house with that great big car. She was kind of like a cross between Dr. Iyanla Vanzant and like Robin Leach, of the lifestyles of the rich and famous. But what was interesting about this show is that Joan Rivers had created a show that was about real people with real ideas investing in the American dream. That's coming from nothing and creating something else, which is like what I want to talk about today. This notion of unconditional investing, having an opportunity to build a community through kindness. Let me explain. So for me, I'm a walking return. All of us here today are a walking return from someone's investment into us. Now, I think about this in a couple of different ways. For me, my first investment came in my mind in third grade. I had a teacher named Mrs. Allen who called my mother and said, hey, we want Brian to be in the school play. My mother said, sure. Then my teacher said, well, we also want you to make the costume. They said, sure. So there I am, third grade, center stage, playing Santa Claus in this show. And the title of the show was quite fitting. The title was called Be What You Want to Be. Didn't make it up, I promise you, be what you want to be. It made sense for me. That was my first unconditional investor. Somebody taking the time to just invest in me. This same teacher decided to keep me longer after school when my parents were going through a divorce. And she made up the childcare time. She made sure I got to rehearsal. She made sure I got back home, back to a costume fitting, so forth and so on. So I've had unconditional investment in my life. That wasn't the only teacher that did it. It was also another woman named Teresa Hayes, who looked at me one day after a post-college experience and said, I think you should dance, because if you dance, you will get your equity card very quickly. This was another investment into me. Not having any information as to whether or not I would be a good dancer, a bad dancer, it would work out for her, not work out for her, but she decided to invest in me unconditionally. So this is a big theme in my life, unconditional investors, right? Then there are risky investors. These are the people who decide for you that they'll learn with you, grow with you, and believe in you. Risky and/or more unconditional. Conditional investors are people who want something. These are people who want a track record. They want to know what you've done in life. They want to know, if I give you X, I am going to get Y. That's interesting. So for me, these unconditional investors have worked out pouring into me, and then I start to pour into other people. One of the people I decided to pour into was a young man named Keenan Scott II. I met Keenan, read his script of Thoughts of a Colored Man, and decided I really wanted to do this show. He decided to be an unconditional investor in my life and decided to take a risk. Again, a risky investor. He liked me, I liked him. Neither one of us had a track record of success, but we both decided to be unconditional investors in one another. Cut to, I'm having lunch with Bob Winkle, president of the Schubert organization, and he says to me over lunch, did you know that I was the trustee chairman of your board? I said, what board? He said, of the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, where you went to school. And I went, oh, I didn't know that. I said, why do you know that? He said, well, it's simple. My job is to know the future of our community, where they have come from and what they plan to do for all of us. That was his investment in me. Therefore, I decided to invest in him, in we, in our community. Which brings me to all of us. This notion of being unconditional investors, having an opportunity to actually invest in one another so that we can invest in we. So I would just ask all of you, when is the last time you decided to invest in yourself and invest in someone else? Unconditionally, without cause, without any idea of what you're actually going to receive. When Keenan Scott II decided to invest in me unconditionally, we took a 4-year journey. That particular 4-year journey is paying off now. I'm pleased to say that come the fall of next year of 2021, Thoughts of a Colored Man will land on Broadway, written by Keenan Scott II in a Schubert house. A return on the investment. Unplanned, unknowing, it just happened. So I invite all of you to think about yourselves as unconditional investors. Invest in yourself and invest in someone else. Because when you decide to do that, you will build a community of kindness, of people that will grow with you, learn with you, and be around you, whether you decide to do the community of Broadway or you decide to do a different community. This notion of unconditional investing will never, ever fail you. Good luck.